federal court has just blocked the bulk of President Trump's sweeping global tariffs from going into effect. The ruling comes from the U.S. Court of International Trade in Manhattan. It's a unique and relatively low-key division of the federal judiciary, but tonight it is flexing its authority in a big way. The three-judge panel ruled in favor of an injunction against the tariffs which have roiled worldwide financial markets in recent months. Unclear right now whether the injunction is temporary or permanent, but the decision is potentially massive political, economic, and legal repercussions. Just moments ago, White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller wrote online, "The judicial coup is out of control." I'm joined now by former federal prosecutor Ellie Honig and former senior advisor to President Obama, David Axelrod. Ellie, is this a judicial coup? What is this court?
No, this is a fully legitimate federal court. I should note, this was a 3-0 opinion. The three judges on this court were appointed by President Reagan, President Obama, and President Trump. So I don't know where they're getting this coup language from. This is a huge setback for Trump and his administration. As big a deal as the tariffs were, this is as big a deal in the opposite direction. It essentially pauses for now, rules illegal and unconstitutional, almost all of the tariffs that have been in place. And the core of the ruling is this. Typically, it is Congress that controls the tariff power. However, Congress can pass laws giving that power to the president in certain instances. They did that years ago in a statute called the IEPA, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. Trump then declared, okay, we are in an international economic emergency because of our trade deficits, because of other economic worldwide factors. And this court unanimously 3-0 said that is not an economic emergency. That is not what the law means. Having trade deficits, which we've had for 49 years continuously, that is not an economic emergency and has now struck down for the time being all of those tariffs that were put in place on Trump's first day and then on quote-unquote Liberation Day, April 2nd.
David, how much of a black eye is this for the administration?
Well, Trump loves tariffs. We know that. He thinks it's a cure-all for all of America's problems. It will, raise revenues. It'll bring jobs flowing back here, manufacturing jobs. It will restore American respect and balance in the way, all of this. But, in a weird way, in the short run, I think it creates a lot of havoc because everyone's trying to figure out when this, in the long run, it could save him from himself because these tariffs are bad economic policy, and these tariffs could raise costs on Americans. They're already starting to. So if the result of it is he's stymied in doing something that's going to raise costs for people, it may be a black eye, but it may also be a break for him.
Ellie, just legally, what's the recourse for the White House here?
So like any other federal case, this will be appealed. I think the first thing the White House is going to do is ask the Court of Appeals, which in this case is called the Federal Circuit. Usually the circuits are 1st through 11th. This is separate. They're going to ask the Federal Circuit, first of all, to block this ruling, essentially to unblock the tariffs. Then the White House is going to appeal to the Federal Circuit, which again functions as that mid-level Court of Appeals. And then whoever loses there, I think, is very likely to appeal up to the U.S. Supreme Court. This could wind up in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. Look, I think this, if we look at the recent U.S. Supreme Court opinions, they've been skeptical of these sort of dramatic invocations by the administration. As one example, the Supreme Court has found that the Alien Enemies Act, this does not involve an invasion or an incursion. So I think there's some skepticism there towards this sort of tendency the administration has of calling everything an emergency, everything an attack, everything an incursion, rebellion, et cetera.
Yeah, I think that what we know is that Trump is not a great respecter of rules and laws and norms and institutions, doesn't want to be constrained, wants to expand the power of the executive, and declaring these emergencies has given him the legal pretext to do it. And now this is being challenged on a lot of different fronts. So there are long-term implications for it.
It also, it certainly throws a monkey wrench into any negotiations that are going on between the U.S. and other countries. Do those continue during a period like this?
Yeah, I think that's a very big question. I don't know how you negotiate if you don't know. Maybe I just don't know. And I think that's one of the reasons why this is going to throw the whole trade picture into kind of havoc in the next few weeks.
So, Ellie, do tariffs remain in place right now?
Most of them, no. Most of them are now suspended. So the opinion specifies 3 categories of tariffs that are now declared illegal. The trafficking tariffs, which were declared on the first day, January 20th, directed primarily at Canada and Mexico and at China. Those numbers have shifted, but Canada, Mexico, China, those are now on hold. Those are now struck down. Also, The so-called worldwide and retaliatory tariffs, those were the ones announced on April 2nd on so-called Liberation Day. The 10% on everyone that Trump announced that day, the 11 to 50% that was imposed on other countries, and the retaliatory tariffs on China. So all of those categories, they're all on hold.
The tariffs that have already been collected.
Right. Oh, that's a great question. Do they go back? I don't know the answer to that. I think if this ultimately gets... No, it's good. I would imagine that if this ultimately gets struck down, if it goes all the way up to the Supreme Court, then there could be an action brought by those other countries to recover. I mean, it would be money wrongly paid, according to this ruling that just came down.
Ellie Honig, David Axelrod, thanks very much.
Markets are jumping in after hours trading on that news that a court has halted Trump's, quote, Liberation Day tariffs temporarily. Dow futures rising immediately on the news by more than 1.1%, 500 points, about 1.5% for the S&P 500, even more than that for the NASDAQ. The bulk of Trump's tariffs now paused by a court. Now, this is a 3-judge panel, as I said, a temporary pause, ruling Trump does not have the authority to impose the tariffs. Paula Reed is out front. Now, Paula, when we look at all of what's been going on with these tariffs, this is an outcome that many had not anticipated. A court getting in and saying Trump can't even do this to begin with. So what can you tell us about this ruling?
Well, we've seen across the country, Aaron, various courts blocking Trump's policies, but this is one of the first times we have seen a court blocking his ability to impose these global tariffs. Now, this particular lawsuit, this was brought by a legal advocacy group that represents small businesses and claimed that they had been severely harmed by these tariffs. And here, this is a very low-profile court. As you noted, at the U.S. Court of International Trade, they ruled in favor of a permanent injunction. So this is a permanent, it's temporary, but it lasts until this case moves on. Injunction. So this is effectively grounds Trump's tariffs to
come forward, sort of begging, pleading, and asking our political leaders to lead responsibly. To lead responsibly. And that doesn't mean agreeing with judges' rulings. Certainly, you know, as Chief Justice Roberts said, there's always been some tension between the branches of government. There always has been. It's as old as the Republic. But there's a difference between disagreeing with a ruling and appealing it and utilizing the constitutional framework to appeal us to a higher court and making it personal. And calling us names and really villainizing us. And I think it is an absolute dangerous road to be going on right now. And I am just praying that for our political leaders and those in power to tone it down. Tone it down. Disagree all you want. But please, don't make it personal, because you're inviting people to do us harm.
Esther, when you saw the message on Monday from the most powerful politician in our country calling judges, quote, monsters, who want the country to, quote, go to hell, did you have any conversations with fellow judges who were scared or worried, or do you have any ongoing conversations with judges who worry about themselves and their families? I guess in most instances, they would worry more about their own children.
No, I've been worried for a long time. I've been worried since we started seeing members of Congress calling for impeachment of judges for doing their jobs. That was something that obviously I worried about. I've been worried about the words rogue judges. I mean, Chief Justice Roberts, he called these illegitimate attacks on the judiciary. He called it out in 2024 in his year-end report. He said 4 illegitimate attacks on the judiciary. Violence, we've seen that, right? We've seen Judge Romer killed by a man he sentenced 15 years earlier in Wisconsin. We've seen Judge Wilkinson gunned down in his driveway in Maryland in October of 2023. So violence, we've seen it. Intimidation, we're seeing it in the form of these pizza doxing that I'm sure we're going to talk a little bit about, and how that's being used as psychological warfare against judges. So second was intimidation. Third, was the spreading of disinformation. You keep saying over and over again, judges are unconstitutional, judges are rogues, judges are crazy leftists, judges are monsters, judges are this, judges are that. You keep saying that over and over again, and after a while, the American public begins to believe that disinformation, and they begin to have and question the justice system. And so that is an illegitimate attack on judges, is the spreading of disinformation. And then finally, even the threatening to not follow lawfully issued orders by the court. These are 4 illegitimate attacks called out by our Chief Justice. And we see it, and we're seeing it in real time. And so for me, I'm here on your show yet again, sort of trying to appeal to people's senses and compassion and, civility and professionalism. And that's why I'm here. I'm here to speak up for justice, to speak up for events like tomorrow's event that we're having at noon, Eastern Standard Time, 9 Pacific. And we're talking about the independence of counsel tomorrow. We're going to keep doing these programs, nonpartisan programs, because we need to speak up for justice. We need to speak up for the rule of law. We need to defend our Constitution. And so, I've been worried for a long time. And, I'm reminded every day when I wake up and the first thing I think about is my Daniel. And the last thing I think about is my Daniel. So I am obviously very concerned for judges all throughout this country. And I just pray that we can start to get back to a place where we can agree to disagree, where we can have civil discourse, and we can all rally around the fact that we're Americans and we live in the greatest country, in my opinion, the greatest country in the world. That's what I'm hoping.
Tariffs have been blocked by the courts. They've effectively said your tariff plan's illegal, you have to modify them, maybe cancel them. We're going to have to figure this out, but what you're doing it, at least the way you're doing it, is not legal, Donald. Sorry. And this is in the context of him threatening judges, right? Now, in some cases, the threats aren't coming just directly from Trump, right? So what some judges are saying is that the Trump threats are less, Donald is going to get convicted of uttering threats to judges. That'll never happen because, 1, he's the president, and 2, he does it stochastically. But that Trump has created an environment where people feel emboldened to threaten public officials. And that's not just judges, but many others. And in this environment that Trump's helped create, we're in a place where, he says the judges are enemies of the people, or the media is enemies of the people, or this judge is crooked, or the judge's daughter is crooked, or the judge's staff is crooked. Or the DA staff, whatever, right? However deep you want to go. And Trump knows this. He's not the brightest guy ever, but he's not that dumb. He knows that when he makes these very generalized threats, that people will act on them. Even if it's only 1 in a million, even if it's only 2 in a million, even if it's only 1 in 5 million, he knows someone's going to act on it. And this is the sort of day that you worry about, because when he takes these big losses in court, that's when he's extra dangerous.